So our first alumni keynote will be with Professor Tony Chan, who was actually prior to SCCM, so really one of the early members of the sort of computational mathematics community at Stanford. So he's a renowned mathematician, an academic leader and innovator in computational mathematics. So Dr. Chen was the president of KAUST, which we heard about, the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia, until very recently. Previously, he was the president of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And so he earned his PhD in computer science from Stanford University in '78. And his advisor was Professor Joe Oliger. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's really a great pleasure to be here. It's a bit of nostalgia, meeting old friends, meeting new friends. Yesterday at lunch, I met with a lot of the younger family of the ICME. I have to say, I really enjoyed all the talks yesterday. I think ICME is going in a good direction, looking at the research result from the professor to the young students. I think it's in a great hands. Thanks in most part to all the people who have led SCCM, ICME. I mean, Parviz, haven't got a chance to say hello. I have met all four of the ICME directors, some for longer. Parviz, you and I went back all the way to NASA Ames, if I remember. Yeah, Peter, I led through Stanford. Margot, I visited ICME some time ago. And Gianluca, I met only recently. And, but anyway, time is tight. When I was asked to give this keynote, I feel privileged. I actually have been in Hong Kong. I flew all the way here. I cannot miss this occasion. Okay. But in case I run out of time, there is now a panel. The last panel is actually a continuation of this, okay? And the panelists are sitting there. I think it's great that, for example, people from Sarah House, my era, they flew in from everywhere and came in, and they're here, okay? So this is the part of the continuation of the tradition. So what I'm going to talk about is actually very personal. It's I lived through part of my life through this program. So I titled it the pre-ICME days because I was not here for ICME. I was not even here for SCCM. I was not here when it became computer science become part of engineering. So we were saying, I am now an officially alumnus of engineering, but I never studied in Stanford engineering. But I'm a proud alumnus of Stanford engineering. I actually put on this past experience just so that you know. So I didn't know that people were going to talk about KAUST. I think some of you asked, what is KAUST? But now you know. And I was at UCLA many years. And there is a connection to all of this. Okay, you bear with me, please. So I thought I would talk about these four things, personal perspectives on these four things. Because history is important. Many of you have touched on it. But there's a part of history that nobody has talked about yet. And that is about UCLA. How George Forsythe came to Stanford, okay? Then, of course, the people. To me, that's the most important thing. The environment that we worked in. Sarah House is more than a house, okay? It's how we work, how we live, how we socialize, and so on. And most importantly for any institution is what impact you have had. All of these are personal, so I don't claim to have a complete history. I might have got something wrong. I've missed out something. Please forgive me. So first, history. So nobody has shown this, but some of you know. Some of you have seen the pictures, actually. So how did George Forsythe came to Stanford? Well, it turns out after the war, Second World War, during which the computer played a big role, as some of you know, the National Bureau of Standards, NBS, now it's called NIST, built an institute called INA, Institute for Numerical Analysis at UCLA. And the date, you can download that report, by the way. It's from 1947, so shortly after the war, to 1957, was it? 54. And I think Forsythe came around that time, right, shortly after that. So a list of illustrious people. I mean, you look at the second slide, I circle. So you see George Forsythe there. I cannot see it here, and I cannot see it there. So it's too, let me move over here so I can see. Yeah, so I circle George Forsyth. Okay, so down below, on the bottom left, that is actually a shot taken at the UCLA campus. Even though the building is not there anymore, it's like Sarah House, it's moved. But you recognize a lot of people there. Some of you, Forsyth is in there somewhere. Magnus Hestenes of Conjugate Gradient was there. And many of these. Some of you are from Quran Institute. I think Fritz Join was the director of this institute for a few years, if I remember. Now, if you look at, it's too hard to tell. Too hard for me to see. But anyway, there's a reason why the top right slide was there. I cannot read it myself. But the one in the bottom explains how George Forsyth came to Stanford. So the institute was closed in 1954. Why? Well, there's an official version, which is in this report. Then there's an unofficial version. The official version is very kind of bureaucratic. It says basically the Department of Defense does not allow any research that is supported by them, not done in the Department of Defense lab. And NBS was not part of it. And so it was closed. But the unofficial version is, now someone told me this, okay, I cannot verify it, is NBS is in charge of certifying things. And one of the things they certified was batteries. And they issued a report that denounced one of the battery manufacturers. And this company, the owner or whatever, was very well politically connected. And that's why NBS was closed. Remember, NBS was based in Washington, D.C., and this is sort of NBS West. So it was more disposable. I think that's the unofficial version, okay? So that's what it is. Now, the one on the bottom right, many of you have talked about this already. The computer science department started in '65. So I joined the department in 1973, and it was 8 years old. I told many people now I meet, younger, I said, there was a time when most universities do not have a computer science department. They find it so amazing. So, I was an undergrad at Caltech. This is a tech school. They did not have a computer science department. In fact, I was asking the professors there, I said, I'm interested in this new field called computer science. Where should I go? They said, well, we heard there's this good, department up north in this young university called Stanford. We heard they're pretty good because Don Knuth went there. This is actually how Caltech looks at Stanford, okay? And then it's close enough. I drove up. I took a look at the campus. I said, I fell in love with this campus, okay? And Gene Golub was another factor because he gave a series of talks at Caltech. And I was an undergrad. And as an undergrad, I was going to all the technical seminars. I remember P's and Q's and A's and B's and, SVD and stuff like that probably. And I thought this was pretty cool. So I decided to come here. On the ICME website, you have some of these where I got it. So it shows the history about George Forsyth. And it's mentioned Gene Golub. He said a young faculty came and they built this program. And that was what that first paragraph was about. Some of these are the ones about when computer science joined engineering, I think, and so forth, and when SCCM was formed. So the dates are as best as I can find, okay? So I was at Sarah House. I don't know when we moved into Sarah House. I was asking all the old timers, nobody remembers. We know that George Forsyth had an office there, and he died in 1971. So it could be 71, could be 70, could be late 60s. We don't know. Anybody knows, let us know. And SCCM started in 87. I remember the move to Margaret Jacks Hall. I was not here already, but I visited. And in ICME, of course, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary. So I don't have to belabor this talk, because many people have talked about this. So what I do want to talk about is spend a little time on the Sarah House part, because I was there, and many of the old timers are here. So you have seen most of these slides. When I prepared this, I did not know that, Eric, you were going to do the same slide. But the difference is that I was actually there, okay? I look at that notice board, the directory, every day, right, when I came in. And
Comment, it was Tony who started the volleyball tradition.
That's right. But see the bottom left picture? I was on crutches. So obviously I was not playing that day, but I remember I had to show up. And That was a very good group. The other thing I want to mention, that trellis, it was not there. It was built by us. So Joe Oliger was a carpenter by trade. He grew up as a carpenter. So one day he just said, hey, it's too sunny here. Let's build something. So we all rolled up our sleeve, and he bought the lumber, and we built it probably in a few weeks. Okay, that's one thing. After it was built, I remember, so how do we want to have lunch out there every day, right? You see that out there. But there was a struggle. There was a difference in opinion. Everybody from the warm countries, and I was part of that, did not want to go out in the middle of the day. It was too sunny. Everybody from the cold country, like Michael Overton, who's from Canada, every chance they have, they're going to go out. Just to tell you, there's a difference in perspective. I think they won. Okay, so all right. So now the people. The second part. This is key. Of course, the founders, Forsyth, Gene, they were mentioned. Jack Harriet. Probably many of you do not know the name. He was very much part of that community. He was with the math department from the early days. Probably predated Gene, if I remember. Yeah. Then, of course, Joe Oliger, my advisor, and Bill's advisor, and Nick's advisor. I remember he was a visitor. I came in 73. He was a visitor in 74. He was interviewing then for the job, and he got the job. So I was there before my advisor, one of the rare occasions, okay? And then since that time, the group, so to speak, had more faculty members, and I list them on the right. Rob is here. Rob somewhere. There you are. Rob and I actually met at Caltech. We did a swap. He did his PhD at Yale, and I did my PhD at Stanford. We met at Caltech. Then I went to Yale, and he came to Stanford. So we did a swap. And then Andy Stewart, who came, it wasn't my time, but he would be in this Sarah House if it were our time. And then Ron Fecchio, I haven't seen him. He's in computer graphics. He was from UCLA. So now, but the people at Sarah House is more than the faculty and the students. So there's a constant stream of VIP, so to speak, the who's and who's in the field. Starting with Jim Wilkinson, many of you have seen that. He was a regular visitor. The one in red is Roland Golowinski. He spent a whole year. I wrote some papers with him. Jürgen Dahlquist, he's on the directory. He was preparing the book with Åke Björk. They was preparing, and later it came out. Charlie Van Loan mentioned many times. He and Gene were writing Golo Van Loan. And I, as a student, was seeing all these manila folders on the floor of some room, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and they were evolving. I sort of remember that very well. Walter Gangder was mentioned. Walter and I kept in touch all this time. I visited him a few months ago in Switzerland. Richard Tapia, getting his National Medal of Technology, probably, or Science, from Obama. And he was visiting the OR department when it was in the Encina Hall. I don't know what is it now. And, but he gave a course in optimization. All of us took the course from him. He was such a personality, such a magnet. We all gravitate to him. We went to Encina and for the seminars. And, of course, they have great cookies in the OR department. And now later on, they moved to Terman. And Jack Dongera. I think Jack was Cleve's student. I think you guys were working on LINPACK. And he would come some of the time. He was a young guy. He was a master's student at Argonne, if I remember. And that's how he got to start working with Cleve and Pete Stewart on LINPACK. And now, of course, he's a Turing Award winner just recently. So it was a stream of visitors like this. I only had time to, just from my own memory. And just as a student, you sit there in Sarah House at Stanford. The world comes to you. Right? For most graduate students, you have to go out to meetings, conferences to meet them, but they come to us. And we have volleyball games and tennis games and so on. All right, so here's a list of the students. Maybe not the visitor, I should have taken it out. The slide on the left was, I borrowed from Charlie Van Loan. I think he gave a talk at the 50th anniversary of Stanford Computer Science, perhaps. Well, anyway, he gave a talk, and it was the same year, the 75th anniversary, birthday of Gene. So he made a list of that. Those are all students. Not all at Sarah House, but sort of in this big computational math community. I try to categorize them on the right. So I say pre-Sarah House. I think Cleve, you probably can verify whether I got it right. Jim Ortega actually was the senior member. predated you, Cleve, if I remember. And Cleve, of course, Beresford Paulette, well-known person in linear algebra at Berkeley. Jim Vera, UBC. Richard Brent, really amazing person. He came back to visit, and he also gave a course on optimization, and we all took it. I took it. Alan George, who became the provost at Waterloo, and many, many more. So that's a quite illustrious list. Then back in Sarah House, I tried to break down the list that Charlie made up into the students. So the Golub student and the Oliker student, and you see them there. Just looking at the list is amazing that we were all there at the same time. Okay, and many of us kept in touch. We are in touch. Many of them are here. Okay, so. All right, so what's the environment like? Okay, first of all, as I said, now that I've lived in Saudi Arabia, I can say it's the mecca of numerical analysis. Every year your pilgrims will go there, okay? Required by the religion, okay? So the second thing is, there's a brand associated with, Stanford version of numerical analysis. One of which is, Gene calls Sarah House the headquarters of SVD. In fact, Eric is wearing that T-shirt. You look at Eric's T-shirt. So we all have a copy, one of those T-shirts. I don't know where I got it. Yeah, I don't know where I still have it. I just don't know where it is. Okay, and there are many others. So I was trying to search online because I cannot find, my T-shirt. So I searched online for this T-shirt, and what I found was the photograph on Amazon. Look at that. SVD, if all else fails, try SVD. I think that sort of summarizes. You can buy this from Amazon, okay? So I don't know who made this up. I don't know. Not one of us, I assume. So the other aspect of the environment is, we have two sort of senior professors, right? Gene and Joe. And there will be 2 seminars every week. Basically, every week there will be someone coming and give a seminar. And after every seminar, there will be a party in either Gene's house or Joe's house. Joe's house is in Palo Alto, not too far. And it was amazing. We just went there. There's usually some barbecue and drinks and so on. That's very much part of the life when I was there. And then, of course, it's not just the Stanford people. When we have seminar, we have people coming from Berkeley, from Livermore, SRI, IBM in Palo Alto. I mean, they all came. And that's how we get to know people. Now, so beyond Sarah House, we have a lot of cross-campus connection. Some of the obvious ones are here. Efron's name was mentioned. Ingrid Oken, and those are 2 members of the stat department that was very close to the group. In fact, Eric and I were reminiscing. So he and I were TA for Brad Efron in statistics. I don't know how that worked. Did we have to have approval? Because we were in computer science. But that's when computer science was still in H&S. Maybe that helps a little bit, not in engineering. OR, Operation Research, obviously George Danzig, Dick Cotto was there, and many of their students. We took classes crossly. We took classes over there, they took classes over here. In math, I think Joe Keller came when I was still a student, okay? And George Paternicolau came a little bit later, I think, after I left. But then in engineering, back then, there's Tom Hughes, who's no longer here, but I think he's in Texas. Bill Reynolds, Tony Jameson, I don't know where he is. Is he retired or is he still here? Okay. Lundberger, we all study using his book. Pavis, okay, and many, many more. In geophysics, John Klabaugh, very much he worked together with like people like Bjorn Enquist and Christ and so on. SLAC, I have to mention SLAC because personally it means a lot, right? Remember, SLAC stands for Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. It's no longer Linear Accelerator, okay, for a long time. But some of us, in fact, the paper on the right, on the top right, is a paper called A Numerical Library and Its Support. The authors are me, Bill, Eric, and Michael Heath. So we were assigned by Gene. They have this IBM big mainframe in SLAC, and they need help with the numerical library. So I think, Eric, you work on it, continuing, and other people work on it, but the 4 of us were, at one time, we wrote this paper. By the way, this paper had very, very little citation. The number of citations is probably the lowest of all the papers I'd written, okay, because the sell-by day is very early. But I'm very proud of this, because we worked together as a team of students. We were graduate students. we were helping this big national lab with what they were, they had this big supercomputer. And to me, it was amazing. Days later, Bill Corrin, who's here, would know. Sand Hill Row, which the Slack is on, is now known for VCs. It's not known for Slack. But when I used to tell you, when I was a student, I drive up Sand Hill Row and I turn left. Today, I go up there and I turn right. Okay, so literally that's what I do. I visit Bill from time to time. I turn right. Back then, we only turn left. Okay, all right. The whole area I mentioned about beyond Stanford. Now, there's a part that is hard to characterize, which is the social aspect, the non-academic, non-professional one. We have lots of parties beyond the seminar one. I remember many of you. Michael Heath had, his wife was with him, so it was a little easier to organize parties. Okay, we would go there for no reason. I think Joe Oliver shared a boat with John Clairbout, and I was out there on the bay. I found out the bay is actually very, very shallow, except for the channel where the ship can come in. You can check it out. It's probably just a few meters deep, most of the bay. Okay, we went skiing. I learned cross-country ski from Peter Bjorstad in Yosemite, among other. I came from Southern California, right? So there's no snow basically there, and we came up here, and this guy, Norwegian, he said, let's go skiing. So I learned that. Weddings. Frank Luck got married out there in Palo Alto somewhere, I remember. The kitchen. Now, this is actually an interesting story. The Serra House, the real house, was the house of the former president of Juniper Serra, I think his name was. And so there was a kitchen. So beyond the kitchen, there was like a small room. I forgot what it was, a storage room. And there was a little terminal, teletype, okay? And that was the connection to the computer at MIT. And I was using it for Maxima. I don't know if any of you know, symbolic computation. There was only one computer in the whole US, in the whole world probably. And you have to log in to MIT. And I was using it for my thesis work. And I went in there in the back of the kitchen to do this. So there are many, many stories like this. And so really it was like a family. Serra House was a home. It's more than a house. It's how we live together and work together. So to me, that's what I will always remember. So I'm coming to my last slide, right? Impact. This is most important, actually. So now, this is purely personal. If you are not on this list, don't feel offended, okay? So I mentioned the Mecca of NA. I mean, you ask anybody of a certain generation about numerical analysis, they will mention Stanford. That's for sure. I think the only other place that I know of that magnitude, reputation, is Quran Institute. I think that's sort of the closest. I mean, UCLA later on has some, but it's nothing like here or Quran. So SVD headquarters I mentioned already. That's kind of an inside joke. But I would say of all the things that I've done, I think MATLAB, Cleve is here. It's really amazing. I checked on Wiki just now. It has 4 million users and 5,000 universities using it. It doesn't mention how much money you're making, by the way, but it must be it really, when it came out, is MATLAB and Mathematica, and MATLAB really in the engineering field is really taken off. All the engineers will know about MATLAB, okay, so that's for sure. LINPACK. I forgot to include that picture. There was a picture with Cleve, Jack Dongera, Pete Stewart, and Jim Bunch in a car with a license plate that says LINPACK. I forgot to include it in here, okay, but you know. So they were working on this, and then later on IcePack. And that was a big deal back then, and that has a tremendous impact in the whole, not just in the computational math community, but beyond. MPI, some people will mention MPI. I think Eric, you mentioned MPI. So Bill Grob and I, we had both had Joe Oliger, a student. He wasn't working on this when he was at Stanford. It was later on that he really took off, and it has a tremendous impact. There's several SIAM journals that started at Stanford. Okay, so I listed 3 of them. I think these are the 3. SIAM Journal on Scientific Computing. Originally it was called Scientific and Statistical Computing. And Gene was the founding editor-in-chief. There was also SciMax, SIAM Journal on Matrix Analysis and Application. I cannot verify online, but I think Gene was also the original editor, but I cannot verify this on Google. Started the same year, 1980. So I was watching this being prepared I left in 78. Then I was involved in founding this Siam Journal in Imaging Sciences. So I was involved much later. Then, of course, you talk about books, right? This Golo Van Loan is sort of the Bible in the field. That's edition 1. As I mentioned, Dahlquist and Bjork were preparing the numerical methods book while I was a student. Then, of course, Joe Oliger, together with Heinz Kreis and that school, published this book on time-dependent problems and difference methods. And then I think the Gang of Three, I call it. Walter was mentioned, Phil Gill, and Margaret Wright wrote this book on practical optimization, which was a Bible back then. So those books have a lot of impact in the field. So members of academy, it's amazing how I make a list. Probably not, it's just I did not check everything. I might have missed. So there's a number of them, right? There's like 8 names there. Either the U.S. Academy of Science or Engineering. So just from that short list of names, it was out there. This is probably one of the highest ratio, I think, probably in the U.S. Professional leadership. I think among this group, there were several Siam presidents. There were 4 of them, if I remember. Gene is no longer with us. Cleve was president, Nick was president. Chairman of the board of Siam, so I mentioned Michael Overton was, but he's not here. And then there are many, many council members and so on, and keynote speakers, Siam fellows, distinguished award winners, and so on. And I want to add the last thing, which Eric was directly involved, which is the NA Digest. Is it still alive, NA Digest? It's still alive, okay. So if you don't know what it is, ask Eric. Okay, this really has a tremendous impact in the field. Okay, so I come to my last slide. So at the end of the day, right, so why are we here? So we like to think we are part of an institution, a school, okay? So what makes an institution? You need the people. We are gathered here. Old-timers, the newest members, the tradition carries on. That's the most important thing. The history and the tradition is important. I think that's important. You know, many of us cover that. I hope the younger members will try to dig up some of these traditions. Could be an inspiration. The culture is important. That's why I mentioned about the environment, how we work together beyond just the classroom. The recognition and the brand. I think, as I mentioned, you know, it's the Mecca. People know what you stand for. If you graduate from this program, people will say, okay, I see. You have a brand. I hope all of you, the young people coming out, you're already good coming in, as many of you acknowledge. So that's very important. The attraction, what I call the draw, right? You attract people. When you hire faculty, when you recruit students, and obviously, ultimately, it's the impact. The impact goes on. Some of these are older. There will be new impact. Personally, speaking for myself, I think Stanford computational math has made, shaped, nurtured, and fostered my own career. So it's easy to think back after 50 years, half a century. So what if I had not decided to come to Stanford? I think I'll probably do okay, but I would have missed out on this huge, school. And so I wish another 20 years. Thank you very much.
Amazing, yeah, thank you. All right, great. So our next speaker will be Esteban Arcot, and he's currently the technical lead for responsible AI at Meta. So he completed his PhD from ICME/SCCM in 2009 under the supervision of Professor Ramesh Johari. So he's been, since then, still very involved in ICME and in particular the WIDS initiative. So this is the Women in Data Science conference, a very large conference that sort of takes place worldwide. And so prior to joining Meta, he held a number of positions in the industry, including at Chemi and Walmart Labs. So he brings a unique blend of technical expertise and ethical insight. And so he's going to share with us his journey and experience. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I think I feel a little bit like Cristobal Colon, as we call it in my country, will feels like I discovered something new. I'm a first wave explorer, and I just heard that the first wave started in the 70s. So definitely not a first wave explorer, but the first set of students that got the choice to join ICME. So we were not admitted in ICME. It's like, hey, admitted to SCCM, stay in SCCM, join ICME. I come from Mexico. I'm like, usually the things that are not there anymore, they tend to not do very well. And so it's like, let's do ICME. No idea what it is, but we'll figure it out. All right, so we heard about this, about the history. We heard about the students. Me, I'm gonna give you the perspective of a student and how actually the professors have shaped what I do, and in hopefully a matter that is gonna make you laugh. And if not, hopefully it'll make you reflect. And if not, well, I'm sorry. All right, so I'm gonna start with the power of landing a message. And this is Amin Saberi. For those of you, well, he would say Saberi. I'll try, but I don't do it as well. And he was the first one to actually say, hey, Esteban, do you want to give it a shot and try to do some research at the end of my first year? And Amin is a brilliant combinatorial and discrete mathematics person. I knew nothing about discrete mathematics other than 3 classes that I have taken literally at Stanford. And I'm like, sure, why not? If you think I can do it, I can do it. So he gave me a problem. It was approximating Nash equilibria on a Friday. And he's like, read everything. It's a super hard problem. There's a lot of literature. And it's going to be fun for 3 months. I'm like, sweet. Monday, I arrive, and I'm like, I've solved this thing. And without even looking at it, he just sat and said, Esteban, you surely didn't think it was going to be this easy, right? And I'm like, dude, it's mathematics. Who knows? Maybe I got lucky. Maybe I'm that good. Who knows? And those of you that know me know that I believe that I'm that good. And I know that I'm not. So basically, I went there, and I start basically explaining my thing, filled the whole board. And before going to the next board, he's like, goes back to like the 3rd equation. He's like, what's this thing? I'm like, well, that's obvious. He's like, yeah, that's obvious. That's what you have to prove. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I learned very quickly that there's a lot more hidden treasures in this field of discrete mathematics. The second one is my advisor, Ramesh Johari. As I was doing some discrete mathematics with Ramesh, started getting a little frustrated that we didn't have a thesis topic. And again, I'm from Mexico. At the time, was a Mexican citizen. It's like, dude, I have to graduate, or what am I going to do? And he's like, look, I have a drawer, I don't know if it's true, full of boring problems that people in optimizations would love to see someone slave over like 3 years to solve so that there's some paper somewhere. It's like, solve a couple of them and you can graduate. I think it's doable. It's like, or we can continue doing some of these fun things that you enjoy, that I enjoy. You might not graduate. What are you going to do? And I'm like, I might not graduate. Who knows? Let's figure out. Remember, I solved a problem in my first 3 days. Oh, of course, I will graduate. No problem. So what did I get with this? So at some point, I got lucky to be in charge of search at Walmart Labs. This was a multi-billion-dollar business. And they gave it to me with 0 search experience. It's like, OK, thank you. And the idea was to bring machine learning to Walmart Labs. And so as you can see here, the biggest problem was that simple queries, like genes for men, were returning a lot of things that were not genes or were not for men. And they're like, hey, use ML to solve this. And I'm like, that's the wrong problem to solve. I don't care about the person that says genes for men. I care about the person that says genes for men, relaxed fit, size, 34, 30, whatever. Basically, the person that puts in a lot of effort, I'm like, that person really is your customer. I'm like, I want to solve that problem. And they told me, Esteban, you surely think it's not that easy to solve that problem. Otherwise, we would have solved it already. So basically, then I thought, what would Ramesh do? It's like, well, actually, look at the fundamentals and try to see if there's an easy way to have your cake and eat it too. And in here, as you can imagine, the number of simple queries that actually drive a lot of traffic is sufficiently small that you can treat them completely separately. And you can use all of your funds to solve the difficult problem. Didn't solve the problem, That's why I'm not at Walmart anymore. But it was an interesting thing, and nobody got fired, which is good. All right. The second thing was with Walter Murray, which for a reason that I still don't understand, asked me during my second year if I wanted to do an internship at Yahoo Research. Now, when I came here to do my PhD, I had worked before, and I made a point that I would not do anything during my PhD that I would be paid for if I was in industry. And that included coding. I'm like, I shall not code. It's like, I want to code, I'll go to Google, I get paid, well, Microsoft at the time, and I'll be happy. And so I was surprised that Walter, out of everyone that actually does things that Walter is interested in, he asked me. I'm like, sure, I'll do it, why not? And the second thing was Ashish Goel. When he got tenure and he was going to take his sabbatical, he told me that he was going to join a startup, doesn't matter which one, to design their monetization system. And this is like in 2009-ish. And I was just surprised. I mean, it's 2009, keyword search, all of these things. It's already solved. I mean, everybody knows how to make money. Ashish, why are you going to do this? This makes no sense. So let me explain what happened when I went to Yahoo Research. So when you actually look at a keyword search problem and you want to monetize, super simple. You go to Google. I tried putting Yahoo, but it's terrible. And you put mortgage, and you have like 3 ads. And the way it works is that basically what you decide to bid is not influenced, what you paid is not influenced by what you bid, but is influenced by who you displaced in the auction, more or less, give or take. And so someone basically realized that, ooh, this is a revenue optimization problem, and it looks like an exponential size linear program, and we can make a lot of money. And you're like, that's amazing. And so it's like, why am I not in that paper? Well, the paper was already there, and they asked me, the intern, try to figure out what happens if we implement this. And what I actually managed to prove is that if you solve this fantastic problem, you get unpredictable business dynamics. Meaning that you're an advertiser, you bid more, you get less clicks. You're an advertiser, you put less budget, you get more clicks. This makes no sense. Well, yeah, but revenue goes up. And so basically what I realized there is 2 things. One, what are the desirable characteristics of a system is actually not clear. You can actually go on, assume that because it has all of that second price auction thing was not violated. There was no shenanigans, there's no cheating. It is just basically exploiting the fact that the way that you select the ad is different than the way that you decide what to present condition on selection. But basically, no one would actually like a system like that. And so this is like 2007 for me, and I'm like, there surely must be someone that is unhappy about the fact that these algorithms work in a way that nobody understands. And there's millions and billions of dollars that are spent in this, and nobody knows how it works. Well, nobody knows how it works still. And I got excited about responsible AI. So let me tell you about some of the things that I work at Responsible AI at Meta, where for a couple of years I was in charge of all of it. Now I'm doing only the technical part because it's hard. And so some of the things that we look into is basically how do you figure out delivery of ads in a way that is fair with respect to the demographic characteristics of people that are receiving the ads condition on the people that the advertiser was trying to target. It's like, that's pretty hard. And we figure out how to do that through some machine learning magic that converges for reasons that I still don't understand, but that someone in my team understands. But more importantly, we looked into how to measure and manage fairness problems with privacy guarantees. Now, if you think about it, you're like, okay, what's a fairness problem? It's like, okay, so you're allocating some resource, and you want to make sure that, let's say, men and women get a fair share, or across ethnicities, age, you name it. Well, in order for you to do your job, you actually need to know who has which demographic characteristics. And usually that's not something that you enjoy doing. If someone is making a decision for an allocative decision for you, you don't want to do that. We figure out how to do this with while protecting privacy. Anyway, we also did some transparency, fun stuff. But right now what I'm doing is basically trying to figure out how to give to the world large language models without all of us dying or all of us being deeply unhappy about God knows what is the thing that these things do. And basically, we're looking at this through providing tools for everyone to be able to deploy these things safely, which is what we call Purple Llama. And you might be wondering, Esteban, how is all of this related to that thing that you talk about Ashish and Walter? Along the way, I have used basic techniques that you see in ICME at critical junctures just because they actually make a connection between problems that seem to be completely separate. And the moment you do them, things just flow through, and you manage to leave to work another day. All right, let me do my last one. Sorry, Margot, you got a big picture. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about is about dreaming big. So about 10 years ago, well, a little bit more because this got delayed, there was the 10th anniversary. And I bumped into Margot, and we talked about I don't know what. And I think that, Margot, you and Karen were putting together the Strategic Partnerships something program. All right, so basically what it was is trying to get some big company, call it Walmart, to provide a large sum of money over 3 years in order to do literally whatever they want. Unrestricted gift to ICME, me working at a company that is known for being frugal. And so it's like, sure, let's give it a shot. This is going to be easy, right? And so after a lot of massaging and talking and whatnot, basically the woman in data science was actually created. And now the part what is dreaming big is actually what came out of this. What I sold Walmart was access to ICME and sponsoring a conference with 400 people, with amazing people coming in, but that's it. And I was like, it sounds like a good bargain. It's like, let's do that. And Margot and Karen's like, no. It's like, there's a conference, but that's not big enough. Esteban is going to be a movement. Like, a movement of what? It's like, that makes no sense. And so what ends up being, and these are figures for right now, is basically 200 events over, I think, as many countries as you can imagine. I don't know if we're still in Antarctica or not, but we're in Antarctica now. Okay, all of the continents, more than 100,000 participants, depending on the years, goes up. More than 1,000 ambassadors and a whole bunch of people that do the datathons. But basically, what I'm trying to highlight here is that the dream didn't come naturally. It's not that, oh, yes, of course, we're going to do this, it's going to happen. It's just basically saying, hey, let's give it a shot and see what happens. And that's Margot and Karen. And so if you think about how it looks like, this is how it looks like, at least in 2022. In 2024, I don't know exactly how it's going to look like, but hopefully the same or a little bit more. And so I hope that I inspire you or made you laugh a little bit about how professors, for me, have affected how I think about problems and the kind of impact that I have had. Thank you.